Testing 1, 2.
3, 2, 1, microphone check.
Right. I make it 6 o'clock, so we will begin. Welcome and hello everyone. I'm Councillor Chris Pearson, Chair of Governance and Audit Committee. I'm not aware of any emergency tests this evening, so if the alarm does go off, you know the usual route is evacuate the building by the nearest, safest place, and then exit to the car park in St Rumwell Street. This meeting is being held in the Grand Jury Room at the Town Hall in Colchester and is being broadcast live on the Council's YouTube channel and will be available to be watched ad infinitum. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access meeting papers, but are asked to keep those on silent and only to use cameras discreetly and not to use voice or camera flash. There are toilets on every floor, as we know, and if we get to 8 o'clock, then we will have a short break, but I'm anticipating that we should be finished before 8. So I'll just ask everyone to introduce themselves as we go round the table from my left, please.
Hayley McGrath, Corporate Governance Manager, Colchester City Council.
Chris Hartgrove, Deputy Section 151 Officer.
Councillor Alison J, Highwards Ward.
Good evening, Chair and all. Councillor Dave Harris, Beerchurch Ward.
Good evening all. Councillor Paul Dundas, Tiptree Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Simon Appleton, Highwards Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Sarah Naylor, Lexton and Braithwaite Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Carl Powling, Mersey and Pyfleet Ward.
Matthew Evans, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you. Welcome everyone. So we have two substitutions this evening. We have Councillor Appleton substituting for Councillor Smith and Councillor Powling substituting for Councillor Sunnox. Welcome Simon, welcome Carl. Moving on to item 3 then, urgent items. I'm not aware of any. No? Declarations of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest at this time on any item this evening? No, I'm not seeing, I'm seeing shaking of heads, so I'll take that as a no. Minutes of the previous meeting held on the 13th of December. Those of us who were here, can we take those as an accurate record? Yeah, I'm seeing nods around the table, so we'll take that as a firm then. Thank you. That leads us on to item 6, have your say, and we have one individual indicating the desire to have a say this evening. I don't know what's going on with the mics. And Councillor Jocelyn Law, if you'd like to come to the chair, please. I'll just remind you, Joss, that you're timed in terms of your contribution this evening, and Mr. Evans will do the usual necessaries with the bell. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Yes, I've come along this evening because, as we all know, the Council is facing great cost pressures in terms of budget setting, and that's affecting budgets and jobs as well. It's really important that we can show our council taxpayers that the council, spends money wisely, looks after council taxpayers' money, and is very careful about how that money is allocated. I've been very concerned to read allegations of inappropriate use of funds at Community 360, and this is an organisation with whom the council works closely on a number of projects. Are involved in One Colchester, the North Essex Alliance, and in terms of working with the Trinity Church and the hub development there. I would like assurance that the council has in place measures to assess any potential reputational or financial risk. And I'd also like assurance that the council examines and has a process for due diligence in terms of assessing the partner organisations it works with and how they spend and use their grants and allocations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. I have to say that at this particular point in time, I'm not aware of any details, and I believe that from the reports that I've read, that there is an ongoing investigation. So I suppose in some respects it could be considered sub judice, but I share your concerns that the council has appropriate measures for ensuring that any grants that it provides to any organisation across the city are properly monitored and used appropriately. All I can say is that I will feed that back to the leader of the council and the chief exec of the council, and I'm just going to ask Hayley McGrath if there's anything that she'd like to add to my response at this stage.
No, I don't think there's anything in particular that I'd like to add, just to reassure Councillor Law and others that we are reviewing those arrangements at the moment. We're reviewing the payments, and that's being looked into. And obviously under our internal audit review programme, we have grant payments in there, but we're making sure those controls are in place, and we will be reporting back shortly.
Right, so you have a minute to follow up, Councillor Law.
Could I ask then that members are updated on next steps and what measures are being taken, just so that they feel reassured? And also, would it be possible to be for members to be informed about if there are processes where, for example, we may be working in partnership with organisations, if any sort of due diligence has been undertaken, are there procedures so that if we have a relationship with organisations over a number of years, you know, is that process revisited? Are organisations reassessed at intervals? That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think those are all really valid questions. Unfortunately, I'm not able to answer this evening, but I will go away and ensure that not only you and I are given the answers to those queries, but that all members of the council are given answers to those queries. I know this is slightly unusual because this is have your say, but I have had an indication from Councillor Powling, and also I'm aware that the leader of the council is in the room. So I'm just going to be a little bit relaxed with the meeting arrangements and allow Councillor Powling to ask any question or make any comment, but keep it brief, please. No? Oh, it's Councillor Corey. Sorry, I do apologise. I thought you'd put your hand up as well. Right, so I've got Councillor Corey online. So I'll just bring Councillor Corey in at this stage, and then I'll bring Councillor King in. Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Chair. I was not completely aware the leader is in the room and probably can explain where we are up to with this. I know officers met today to talk through Rory Doyle and Richard Block in particular, to talk through the implications, and we absolutely want to make sure we have done everything we can to ensure the money and the funding that we put into organisations, whether third sector, voluntary, private or other public organisations, is spent correctly. So as you say, we are still finding out more about the particular ways in which this money was spent or loaned. I think the leader will follow up and explain that we absolutely work with our partners. We do due diligence. We do that with all partners we work with. But I think Jocelyn Law's points are quite helpful. I think we probably should look at doing that on a regular basis, updating. But I do feel we have trusted partners that we work with, that we do ensure they are putting money in the right way. But in this case, we are investigating further, and we believe that our money has been spent in the right way, but the leader can assure you more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corey. I'm just going to bring Councillor King in then at this stage. Councillor King.
I'll keep this very brief. For reasons members will understand, as I have had a past involvement with, which I will go public on in detail, not that it's absolutely germane, frankly, to the problems we've got now, Community 360. I'll just say that I'm not leading on this issue. That is the portfolio holder for communities. Councillor Corey has said it as well as I wanted it to be said. The questions from you, Jocelyn, and from other members are similar. Councillor Dundas and I have had exchanges at the weekend as one example. So we know that we have to provide assurance that will be done in the appropriate way. Members will be kept informed. But Chair, you said absolutely rightly, this is frankly sub judice in the sense that the organisation, which has many strengths and does provide a range of essential services, has got to have a moment to get itself sorted. That's for them and to respond. But members are absolutely right to want to know what's happening, to have assurance they will, as described by Councillor Corey, will get that, and we'll keep all in touch. There was one extra point to make. We mustn't conflate this organisation with the City Council. It has a whole variety of important partners, and the important thing for our officers to do is ensure that they're all in a row about the approach and the way ahead, and I'm sure we'll hear more of that. As I say, I'm 1 yard off, but members will be kept abreast. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. Yeah, I think it's important just to remind everyone, both in the room and outside, that Community 360 is not a part of the City Council. It's not organised or run by the City Council. And I did check before this evening's meeting whether or not we have any members on the board from the council, and I'm informed that we don't. So although we have a long-standing, the City Council has a long-standing relationship with Community 360, and I think we'd all say that the organisation does a lot of very good work across the city. It isn't directly associated with Colchester City Council. That said, we have put money into Community 360 and a significant sum of money into Community 360 over the years. So it's absolutely essential that we are all kept abreast of hopefully the response that that money has been used appropriately.
Just like to thank you, Chair, for that, and look forward to receiving that information and updates from officers, and thanks for the responses this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Right, that's have your say for this evening. We'll move on to, my apologies, Carl, I thought I'd seen your hand go up. So item 7 is the usual standing item update from our Section 151 officer, and Mr. Hartgrove is going to update us this evening.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd sort of like to thank the committee for your continued patience on this long-running saga. But in this evening, I'd like to be able to tell you that we've published the accounts, but unfortunately, I can't do that. The news is a bit more sort of mixed, a bit more nuanced, if you like. We are, I must stress, making very good progress, and we're getting very close to the finishing line now. I mean that really close to the finishing line. We're literally getting, we're at the stage now where the final part of the statements is being pulled together and tidied up, ready for publication. So we're getting very close. Sadly, we haven't published. I can't give you that news tonight as much as I would like to, but we are getting there. We've updated the publication notice now on the website through to next Friday now, the 16th. So we are getting very, very close, rest assured of that. And part of this evening, the next item, in fact, on the agenda this evening, gives you the final sort of capital outturn. So the outputs, the underlying outputs from the process are beginning to feed through now, shall we say. So so that's the position as of this evening. And I probably, one thing that I learned actually a few days ago is probably worth adding for a bit of context. The audit delays are on a gargantuan sort of national scale, as we all know. But one thing I didn't realise is that in terms of actually publishing the draft statements for 22-23, as of the 31st of January, there were numerous councils up and down the country in exactly the same position as Colchester, and that included 44 district councils, of which we were one. So we are in a minority. It's nothing to be proud of, if you like. It is quite embarrassing while it lasts, but we're not alone. There are lots of councils up and down the country in the same position. So, in terms of the audit for 2021, that is progressing in the background. The auditors have been active, I believe, and we're still awaiting news on when the 21-22 audit will commence. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hartgrove. I think before I take questions or comments, I would just like to say, you know, I know that it's been a difficult year for you and our Section 151 officer. It's been a new set of challenges for both of you, working with two authorities for the first time, and all that has entailed. And obviously you're having to put together budgets for two local authorities as well, which is a new thing. But I am reassured by all the reports and feedback that I get from both you and Andrew Smalls, either in this meeting or in camera, that the two of you are very much on top of our finances. And if you had found anything that we ought to be concerned about that was of any significance, you would have alerted us to that by now. Right, I've seen Councillor Dundas's hand, and then I saw someone else's.
Right. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chris. I'm aware that you've had two local authority budgets to get over the line in recent weeks. So well done on getting there on those. What perhaps I was just going to ask about is, and this committee, we deal with risk. Risk is an integral part of what we look at. With the audit, we all know that to start a set of accounts, you need your closing balances from the previous year to start your next year. And we haven't got the audit going back to 2021. There is a risk, clearly, that if there is disagreement from our auditors over some of the figures in the 21 accounts, particularly around valuations and debts, you know, or assets, then those changes will cascade down through a number of years' worth of accounts, and could even affect things like this year's budget, because if our valuations are off, then that could have an impact. So as a committee or as a council, how much risk should we be apportioning to the fact that once the audits are done, and we're talking about 3 years worth, there will be changes which actually have a material effect upon the figures we're looking at now, effectively for 24-25.
Chris, Andrew is online. I wasn't aware. Do you want me to bring him in, or do you want to respond first?
I'll partially respond. There's just one point to pick up on, is the valuations point. Just to be clear that any valuation adjustments are sort of technical accounting adjustments in local authority currency. That means it doesn't affect your usable reserves. So the risk around valuation adjustments is not as great as it was seen, even though the numbers can be large, it's true, but they are actually, there's various compensating adjustments. So even if it was wrong one year, it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be, it's self-correcting, if you like, the following year if you get it right. But so it doesn't affect subsequent budgets. But I'll bring in Mr. Small now, who wants to speak on this.
Thank you. Mr. Small.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. I suppose, first of all, I was going to say that actually it's not through, the delays in producing the account isn't through a lack of effort, and there's an awful lot of time and energy going into actually producing those accounts. But the delay is partly associated with the delays around audit as well. And that is to do with the complexity of how complex local authority accounts have become over the years. Not only is it difficult to prepare the accounts, but it's also, as we've seen, difficult to audit the accounts as well, really. So the two issues go hand in hand, and explains why so many councils up and down the country haven't either produced accounts or haven't had those accounts audited. And in relation to Councillor Dundas's point, really, I had the opportunity in the last few weeks to meet with the public sector lead on another of the big accountancy firms that audit local authority accounts. I shan't disclose which one, but it wasn't BDO. And we talked about the process for resolving the backlog of accounts. And the government is just about to issue a consultation, which we expect to issue or to include a long stop date of the 30th of September, by which all accounts have to be concluded by, up to, but not including the 23-24 accounts. And the partner of that particular audit firm said, if we haven't started an audit, or realistically don't think there's any prospect of us concluding an audit by the 30th of September, then we're just going to say we can't gain the necessary assurance, and in essence qualify the accounts that haven't been completed by that date, which is what the government is leading the firms to do. So I think, realistically, we're with the state of play with BDO right now, and I think we should prepare ourselves for a number of years of accounts to be concluded as at the 30th of September as unaudited, really, or qualified. And I think that's it's wholly undesirable, I suppose, really, because of some of the issues that Councillor Dundas has highlighted, really, and not least of all providing reassurance to the council taxpayers of the district. The council understands its financial position and can provide reassurance, I suppose, on its position. So I think we're likely to enter the situation through our endeavours or not, whereby we're not going to have a surety about our financial position as at the 30th of September, and that will probably have ramifications for years to come in terms of balances brought forward which can't be assured. I think the government is indicating to the firms that unless they have reasons to doubt a brought forward balance, they're just going to have to accept it at that point in time. In terms of risk, though, I think the big areas of risk where an audit opinion could have changed the position as set out within our published draft accounts. And I think some of the big areas, such as pensions, for example, or valuations, neither of which have a tangible impact upon the council's cash balance of cash holdings or a profit and loss, income and expenditure account. So I think the risk is contained. It's not to say there are no risks, and with accounts that there's always a matter of opinion about whether they've been treated in the right way or not, and there's a degree of subjectivity about that, even within the rules that are laid down. So I think that there's the potential for changes, but I don't think those changes will be of sufficient size to cause any concern to the council's balances. That's probably all I wanted to say. Thank you, Chair.
You, Andrew. Councillor Douglas, do you want to pick anything up?
Only to say, just for clarity, I wasn't accusing anybody of not doing lots of work. I guess my only question to follow up on that is, if we accept that we may not get an audit for 2 or 3 years worth of accounts, is there any indication what the plan is from the government, if they have one, going forward from now? In other words, what is the plan to actually achieve an audit for the 24-25 accounts, etc.? Have we got any information where we're going with that?
I suppose firstly it's the 23-24 accounts, isn't it, that are not being dealt with. So Chris, I'm going to leave that one to you or to Andrew. Andrew.
I expect the consultation will include the process for bringing us back online, really, or back on track. I think 23-24 will have to be resolved by, I think the date will be 31st of March next year. So that will be the long stop date for that accounts. And thereafter, we enter a new regime with new auditors, really, in essence. The government very much wants to put all of the backlog behind us and start with a clean sheet almost, really. But as we all know, accounts rely on brought forward balances, and as I say, for that reason, even though the government has just drawn a line under it, there will be continued uncertainty, I suspect, for years to come until the prior year's accounts have washed through, so at least for a couple of years, I suspect we're going to be dealing with the legacy of the backlog that we've seen over the many past years within our account sign-off process. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I've got Councillor Harris and Councillor Naylor next. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Enough said about the audit. Yes, I've agreed with the previous comments, but I've got a few questions on the commentary underneath it, if that's okay, if that's allowed. Rowan House has had a substantial upgrade.
Sorry. Councillor Harris, we're not on to the capital programme yet.
Okay. Well, it's on the commentary in this document.
Yeah, no, this is item 7, the verbal update. Okay. So, was there anything that you wanted to? No, right. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Andrew for picking up on the government proposal to bring forward legislation and consult on what to do in this situation. So I'm glad he's picked up on that and talked it through. So the other point of concern is the statement of accounts for 2022-2023. So just looking back over the last verbal updates in the minutes we've just agreed, it was initially hoped that they would be published in December and then 12th of January. And I think my colleague, who's unfortunately not able to be here tonight, Councillor Sunnox, expressed a great deal of concern that it was very important that the accounts would be published in January. Speaking in his capacity as a chartered accountant, he felt that was very important in order to have an informed position for this coming budget. And he did say, and it's noted there, that it was important it was January, not February, and I appreciate you've given reasons why that hasn't happened. In the commentary, though, it's noted that you're optimistic that Friday, 12th of January would be met, and of course it hasn't been. And I just wonder what degree of confidence you now have, given you were confident in January, and you're talking about being confident now that you will publish on the 16th. I'm wondering if you could just describe to us the difference in confidence levels.
Over to you, Mr. Hargrove.
Right, I think the first thing to address is Councillor Summit's concerns, which I agree. It was at the point in time in the meeting you described, at that point in time we didn't have any confidence around the actual reserve levels that the council had. We were unclear, we hadn't got to that stage in the process, and that was the main area that Councillor Summit was quite reasonably concerned about. We actually reached that stage about 3 weeks ago, something like that, and that's maybe longer, actually 3 or 4 weeks ago. We did reach that stage, and those reserve levels have been shared widely and informally with the administration and some of the council funders, for example, and council summits. I'm not sure how widely they've been shared exactly, but so the reserves position has been shared. So we have got to that point that Councillor Summits was concerned about. So that's the first thing to say. I think the second thing to say is, in terms of preparing a statement of accounts, is one of those things you don't know until you get there what you find, if you see what I mean. So we've got a team of people working on this that have been literally working weekends and everything to get them over the line, but they find unexpected things along the way. Not bad things, but you know, somebody's posted a journal round the wrong way, or you know, something doesn't quite add up and needs to be corrected. It's all quite normal. It's just the scale of the things that you have to go through to get to that final stage. So you never quite know right up until the last minute, but we've got to the point where the actual accounts themselves were balanced in terms of the trial balance several weeks ago now. That's a major milestone. Recently, in the last few days, we've got to the point where the balance sheet fully reconciles to the income and expenditure account. Again, another major milestone, and that is very late in the process now. From my experience, there's not too many things that could go wrong at this point. We are literally on the final furlong, and it's just a case of tidying it up and you know, completing the group accounts and publishing the accounts. So the big risk areas have all been tackled. The reserves are known, as I say. We're nearly there. I can't really say more than that. I suppose the only other thing I would say is that we've had, and half the reason why the council is where it is, we've had a number of resource issues where these accounts were began by one person removed from the person that's doing it now. And so you get different personalities, and the person that's coming in now is vastly experienced, is a perfectionist, if you like, and he's staying with us to complete the 23-24 accounts, which sort of pretty much starts in a few weeks' time anyway. So there will be a positive legacy from the work that's been undertaken in the last few weeks. So, you know, it's one thing publishing something quick, get them out the door, get the governance and audit committee off your back, if you like, but I've got one eye on the quality of the 23-24 accounts. It's important that we have that legacy from the 22-23 accounts, and that they're stronger and get published more quickly than this year. So.
Thank you. I think, you know, you're quite right. The devil is often in the detail, isn't it? You think where something is, and then when you start to unpick, turn over, you might find something that doesn't quite add up. And no doubt we all share some anxiety that we haven't got those figures published yet. But as you quite rightly say, I'd rather you spent another few weeks getting them right and then publishing them in draft form when you're comfortable with them, you're confident in them, and we can be more confident in them as well, I would expect. Councillor Naylor.
Yes, and thank you for that detail. It was interesting to hear the thinking behind your position. I just want to finish with one point. So I've today received in my email, and I'm sure everybody else has, an invitation to a briefing about the budget on the 14th of February. And just really for this committee to note that the statement of accounts for 2022-23 won't be published until the 16th of February. I do find that troubling and very uncomfortable from a councillor point of view.
Mr. Harker?
Sorry, it's worth mentioning that we are some months ahead of where we were this time last year. So the 21-22 accounts were not published until the 15th of September. Not a good place to be, but we are actually in a better position than we were this time last year.
Yeah, and we haven't been in the best of positions now for several years, as Councillor Dundas will attest to from his time as leader of the council. Delayed audits, late audits, have been the nature of the beast now for too many years. But I say, I think we all share the similar, if not the same, anxieties around a lack of unaudited accounts. But as I'll repeat myself, the one thing that I think reassures me is that we've had a new set of finance officers crawling all over the council's books over the last year, and I am sure that there is nothing that they would have wanted to hide, because there is nothing for them to, nothing in it for them to hide. So if Andrew and Chris had found something that was greatly amiss, I'm sure they would have brought that to us long before now. Councillor Dundas.
Yeah, just very briefly, Chair, I don't want to drag this item out, but I would actually just like to say something nice, actually, about our finance team. I'm aware that some of it's still work in progress, particularly around moving some of the figures around from different cost codes and that, and kind of sort of starting from scratch again. But actually, I do have to say that in terms of the actual granular information we're getting about where the council spends its money and what makes us money and what costs us money, I think if any councillor takes the time and trouble to read some of the detail which is published, you do get a far fuller picture than we've had in the past. It seems remarkable to say that we've had periods where we don't actually know where all the money goes, but if we're honest, I think we have had periods like that. The information just wasn't there. So I do think that the way it's being presented is a big step in the right direction, and I can only encourage our finance team to keep at it, really.
Thank you. Yeah, I know, I haven't spent as much time as I have this last year looking at the granular of our finances and also our assets. And I was quite surprised to learn that we didn't have a complete asset register, which is now just about there. But I say that for me was an anxiety. But I say I share your comments, Paul. That I think from a councillor point of view, I feel much more secure in my understanding of where we're at financially, but also what we have as a council in terms of the asset register, which has been a bit of a concern for me, and a greater understanding of our capital expenditure. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I haven't seen any other hands, so we've agreed now midway through the year that we'd have this as a standing item on all agendas for G&A, and I think it's helpful to do so until such time as the committee decides that it's no longer required. But that may never happen, certainly not in my lifetime. Right, thank you very much, Mr. Hargrove. Thank you, Mr. Small. We'll move on to item 8 then, capital expenditure outturn, and I think you're going to introduce this for us again, Chris.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as I indicated early on, this is part of the sort of wrap up, if you like. The final accounts themselves, as we've discussed, are getting very close now, and as part of that process, we are wrapping up, if you like, in terms of the various documents that underpin those accounts. And this is one of them. So this is the capital outturn for 22-23. Unfortunately, quite late, obviously, but nevertheless, we got there in the end, and it's presented here this evening. Now, the underlying details, of course, and the time that these transactions took place predate my time in Colchester. So I've got Lucy Bredman online who's kindly offered to help out potentially some of the detail if I can't handle it. But just to sort of give you a brief flavour of what it's about, the General Fund Capital programme for 22-23 was actually in total, the approved budget was 73.466 million, and there was significant slippage on the programme, as outlined in the document. The details are in there, and the most significant item was loan advances, 26.7 million to Colchester, and for housing that subsequently didn't take place during 22-23 as planned, due to a change in the housing delivery strategy in the councils and changing appetite, if you like, for risk. So details are in the report. And moving on to the housing revenue account, a very similar theme there. There was overall approved budget for the year of 61.785 million, and there was also some significant slippage there, most notably on the house building programme, whereby the house building programme slipped by 12.798 million. Again, the details are in the report. I think somebody mentioned the overspend on Rowan House. That's also included in the report. You'll see a brief mention on there. I don't know the full history of the Rowan House project. I believe that the eventual budget was significantly larger than that presented in there. So it's partly a timing thing, the actual overspend there in 22-23. I'm not sure if colleagues could possibly help me out on some of the history and the detail around that. But happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Thank you, Chris. Just before I go into bring members in, I just wanted to very briefly update with HRA. There's a review of the housing revenue that's ongoing, but I am aware, and I know that I've made promises from the chair that members of the committee have expressed a desire for a comprehensive learning session, briefing session on how HRA actually operates. And so I know I have tasked the officers to go away and produce something. There will be an all-member briefing on the new HRA, but I've asked for a briefing for committee members on Teams as soon as that can be put together, so that all of us fully understand how HRA operates. Questions and comments? I saw Councillor Dundas indicating, and I'll look for others as we go around. Councillor Dundas.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a few questions and comments, really. It's actually quite difficult to sort of sometimes remember dates around this, because we're looking at the year we're looking at, and of course we're actually quite a long way on now, so you're trying to think back, hang on, what were we doing back then, and you know, why wasn't that spent or whatever. Just a couple of questions from the actual list of projects. The Highwoods Community Centre, now we know that I think 195,000 was spent at some point on that, because it's in this year's budget, draft budget I should say. But I understood the actual budget was 1.8 million. That was set at full council. I've just checked the papers, so it doesn't seem to quite add up as to the figures in there as to what the original budget was. I also just wondered, I mean, the walk, which 153,000 was spent on, but as far as I'm aware, that was completed by 2021. So I'm just wondering what has actually been spent on that there during 22-23. And I think we also perhaps have to look at some of the narratives, because if we look down in the details, it says on a number of occasions, you know, it is expected to be spent in 23-24. But we know that's not true because we're already nearly at the end of 23, 24, and some of these things are not going to happen. So I'm wondering if maybe some of those narratives need updating to reflect reality a bit. And my final question is regarding Rowan House. We can see, and I think Councillor Harris is probably going to ask about the actual budget and the spending. But as we move towards the corporate landlord model, the council will effectively become a tenant there of itself. So we should be putting a figure in there as to whether it's a nominal figure or it's charged back between cost centres or whatever. We should be able to calculate our return on investment in terms of what we spent on it and in terms of what we're getting back in terms of its value with all the tenants, including ourselves, but the other ones there as well. Have we got any idea where we're heading for our II on Rowan House, just to give some idea whether it's been good value spending all that money or not?
Thank you. And I think, Lucy, you're online, aren't you? I think you may be the place to answer a number of those questions as they're historical, and Chris may not be au fait. Can I bring you in at this stage, please?
Yeah, although I think, to be fair, I'm going to struggle as well a little bit, because this is actually before I got involved with the capital programme as well. So I do apologise for that. Our capital guru, Jo, is poorly at the moment, and she would have definitely had some of those answers. With regard to St Mark's, there were different figures. Again, with the years, there was an original figure, then there was a decision, as you say, Councillor Dundas, to add some more money to that programme, but we'd have to go away and check the timing there, because I can't remember precisely when that additional figure was added. And I think with regard to Rowan House, that was absolutely, as Chris said, it was about additional costs that came about from the refurbishment work that were found. So there's some narrative about that in there, but I'm afraid I can't really help much more with the detail of the other ones. We'll have to take them away, I'm afraid.
Thank you. I see that you've indicated, Councillor Corey. I don't know whether you've got answer to any of those queries.
Thank you. I have, and I was just trying to look through the finances over Rowan House, because I know it does pay back, and there's a return on investment over a number of years that will get us to paying it back. I will just have to have a look at it, but essentially, I will come back to you with a clearer picture if possible. But I do believe there's a certain number of years over which we will have paid back the costs of the capital sums put in by us, including with the reduction of the decarbonisation grant and the increased income that we do get from the new tenants in the space. If I can find the exact timing, I'll let you know, and the return of investment percentage, but basically we will pay it back over a number of years, not too long in the future. I'll let you know if I find it, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I was going to say, rather than you whistling in the dark, I'll bring one or two others in, and that gives you the opportunity to have a look through, so you can give us the detail. Anything else, Councillor Dundas, at this stage?
No, did I have anything else? Hang on. He says going to think. No, it's also actually we also spent 188,000 on the main grid connection. It says up at Northern Gateway. My guess is that was probably design work, because I'm not aware there's anything physically being done there, but perhaps we can clarify that.
Okay, thank you. Lucy, are you au fait with that?
No, I'm afraid that's one we'll have to go away and clarify, unless anyone else on the call knows.
Fine, I think we'll take that one away then, Paul, and see if we can find the answer. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Rowan House, starting off on that question, I've got several questions. One here is, for me, is the fact that it was a good decision, in my view, that we obtained Rowan House those years ago, and that sits, and you mentioned earlier on, Chair, the asset register. The Rowan House sits on our asset register. refurbishing it is the right thing to do, and it obviously would have added value at some stage. That valuation will have to be adjusted for the works that we've done, surely. My question also is about whether the unforeseen works it talks about in the text here, if any of that was possibly insurance work, if there was damage that had happened through water egress, ingress, etc., and whether any of that is reclaimable elsewhere than here. That's the first question. Do you want me to stop it there and go to the next one?
Carry on. Although with that last question, my understanding is that that's not the case, that there was no income from elsewhere.
Thank you for the answer.
I think one of the points that you might want to make, and this was one that I raised recently as well, was what we actually paid for Rowan House in the first instance, to give us an idea of value.
Yes.
Carry on.
Yes. And the second question is about the disabilities grant facility in here. It talks in a paragraph here about not having the staff because of lack of delivery resource to do the 100 or so facilities, disabled facilities improvements that are in the budget to be done. And I think that's sad, because there are 100 people out here in the City of Colchester that are perhaps living with this, without the disabled facilities at the moment that they probably would have been entitled to. I hope that situation changes quickly. It talks it more positively in the end of the paragraph than the beginning, but so I'm quite pleased about that. But I want to highlight that, Chair, the fact that we're an underspend and how quickly we can turn that around. It talks about at the end about improving that delivery service, and I hope that does happen. If there's any more detail on that, it'll be very great, either today or some future stage, because across the whole of the city there are these 100 people that we're worried about.
Thank you. Yeah, I too was concerned about the underspend on the disability grant, but I was reassured that there are valid reasons for that. Chris, did you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to pick up on the technical point about the valuations, now the valuation would automatically get picked up as part of the year-end accounts closure process, so that the scheme was completed in 23-24, so the increased valuation will be reflected on our balance sheet as at 31st March 24.
Chair, I think that would be a positive as well, because obviously with those improvements like you do on your house, do an improvement, build an extension, do anything, it puts the value up, doesn't it? The last bit was on the youth service. The youth service, Chair, it talks about the townhouse and money being, where was it, underspent, which I think I've got my facts right, where it talks about underspent on the town, 1.7 on the town centre townhouse or whatever it is. I just wonder whether there's expected to be delivered in 24-25. How confident are we, that, Chair, that that's going to happen? Because and how confident are we that underspend won't go over budget, bearing in mind that it'll be 24-25 ish figures rather than the 21-22 figures that may have been estimated at the time. I worry about that really, to make sure we get value for money.
Okay, thank you. I think you're referring to third bullet point in place and client on page 21, when you're talking about the town centre underspend. Okay. Lucia, I'm not sure whether you've got some answer to Councillor Harris with regard to the disability grants.
Yeah, I can come in. That is one I do know a bit more about. So certainly with regard to DFGs, Colchester, despite having a huge sum of money to spend, we actually do have a really good reputation and have done some really good work on disabled facilities grants. It's one of the reasons we have so much money, because the more you do, the more money you get. So the point about staffing is a really important one, especially at the moment with our current situation with the revenue budgets, because this is better care fund money. So this is health money that they give us, but they don't give us any money for the staff that we need to do the administrative work. So that's a bit of a challenge for us, because obviously we've got a team that costs around about £100,000 there. And if we add to that team, that comes out of our revenue budget. So it's a bit of a balance about how much we can afford in that team, but appreciating the point, it's really, really important that we keep people in their homes. We are looking, and part of our Fit for the Future, we'll be looking at how can we maybe do that differently and work with the health partners that give us the money to find a different way so that we can get more resources in and use that money slightly differently. It's legislation, so the law just says we can't do it at the moment, but we might be able to find a way through that. And certainly we've been lobbying for a change in that legislation, and so have many other councils. But I just wanted to reassure you, it is really positive. Colchester does really well in this area.
Thank you, Lucy. And the town centre underspend, are you able to
well,
respond?
I'm thinking that's one of the townhouse from memory was one of the town deal projects. So my understanding is that is all going ahead. I think there were some delays because we were looking at procurement, and it was a project that was being run by Essex County Council Youth Services. But we can get an update on that for you.
The bit, Chair, was about the finance. The prediction was we needed X amount of money, and then it's been delayed, and the X amount of money is put aside. It's not inflation proof, obviously, and prices could go up between now and when it's delivered. That's the point I really want to get across.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point, Councillor Harris. We know, Dave, that cost of building has gone up exponentially over the last 18 months, hasn't it? So that will impact, and that will have to be taken into account in future reviews of the capital programme, I would suggest. Okay, I think that's dealt with all of your questions. Any other comments on the capital programme from around the table? Councillor Dundas again.
Just very briefly, I mean, just to come back on Rowan House, I don't know what we paid for it, but I can tell you what our mortgage is on it, for want of a better description. It's 8.182 million.
Thank you. And I was just going to come back to Councillor Corey and see whether he's now managed to do his sums as well.
Thank you. I have done some sums, but I will have to go back to Richard Block, who did run the project, to absolutely clarify the length of the contracts, the new contracts we now have, bringing in rental income. And then I can give a fuller answer. So I have already sent an email to Richard asking those very questions. So what I can tell you is the grants that we brought in and the way in which we finance the project against rental income that we have got coming in. The net cost to us as a council is 1.8 million of these works. So we are looking at how we can pay those off over time with the income that is above and beyond the borrowing costs of 4.2 million. So we get income coming in at around £500,000 as a result of the new contracts that we have and renewing an old one. So there is a small profit there made on top of the borrowing costs, but of course we're paying back the 1.8 million over time. So I will get that checked and I will pass an answer to you, Chair, and to the whole committee for you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think that's everybody's comments and queries then dealt with. We were just asked to note and comment, and I know it's been exercising a number of us that we didn't have this capital review document in front of us. We've now had it, so thank you. I think we're grateful to Chris and the team for getting that to us and giving us the opportunity to interrogate it. Was there anything on the HRA element that anyone wanted to raise? Or should we just note that as well? Yeah. Thank you. So that moves us on to item 9, the internal audit plan. Over to you, Hayley.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual report for you, setting out our audit programme or intended audit programme for the next financial year, so for 24-25. The council operates a 5-year rolling programme. So when we renew our contract with our internal auditors, we set a projected programme for the coming 5 years for the length of the contract. So it's appropriate that on an annual basis, we review the plan that we have for that coming year. So I've set out for you, the auditors have set out for you the intended programme for 24-25. It covers 271 audit days, and they've also set out a projected audit programme for the following 2 years. So you can see how audits take place. Some of them are recurring annually, some of them take place every 2 years or every 3 years. In terms of the audits that are being carried out, some of them, as I say, are annual ones that we need to provide support for the statement of accounts, to provide those assurances about our key financials. And some of the audit days are given over for Colchester Borough Homes, for joint audits with them in terms of some of those housing issues. And we also provide auditing days for Colchester Commercial Holdings Limited. Now, they're able to use some of those days for areas where they may have concerns. They're not directly reportable to this committee when those audits take place. They're reported to their board first, but they do come to this committee later on in the audit updates for you. So as I say, we've set out our intended programme for next year. That takes into account the risk areas from our strategic risk register, any known particular issues at the time the plan was put together, and as I say, some of our key financials that we have to report on, including our joint services. So for tonight, it's the opportunity to interrogate that plan, to highlight any areas where you feel that audits may be required, or to ask any questions about the audits that are going to be undertaken. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Hayley. And Tia have been the internal audit partner with the council for a number of years, so we're all familiar with their documentation and how it looks. Any questions, comments about the plan that's in front of us? All happy with the way those 271 days have been allocated? Obviously, it's a 3-year rolling programme, and we'll look forward to the audit findings when we have the Hayley McGrath show next municipal year. Councillor Harris.
Just a quick question, really. I mean, absolutely supporting what's in front of me, Chair, but some of this takes the stuff off of the shop floor, that's the right word, is it, to attend and sit with auditors for the day here and there, 271 days. I just wonder whether that's been taken into account that somewhere or other they were staffed. Maybe they don't, I don't know, maybe they don't get taken off the shop floor, maybe the auditors come in and help themselves to the files without recourse or redress. But I'm guessing there is some sort of, sitting with, and I wonder if that's catered for, and whether we make sure that those staff are supported in the delivery of their usual day-to-day work if they're taken offline to do some audit work. I know it's only small potatoes, 14 days on this particular subject in the department I saw in one of them, but I just wonder if that's a valid question you can help me with.
Absolutely, Councillor Harris, a really good question. So in terms of the audit programme, what we do is we work with the heads of service prior to the delivery of the programme, and we ask them what appropriate time of year, what quarter would they like the audit undertaken, because some of the audits have to be programmed towards the end of the financial year to provide reassurance for the accounts. Some of them we want to miss particular deadlines where there's peaks of work in certain service areas, for example benefits. So when it's a peak claiming time, we make sure that we don't carry out the audits in those times. And the actual number of days specified for the audits is the number of days the auditor will spend on it. So that doesn't necessarily mean that's the number of days they will spend with the auditee. That's the number of the days they will work on it. So what will happen with an audit is they have what's known as an opening meeting, where they meet with the head of service and the relevant officer who delivers that service. They talk about the audit, they talk about the brief that's been put together, and the auditor will ask for certain documentation at that point in time. So, for example, we have an audit going on at the moment, and they've asked for some policies, some procedures, some transaction data. They take that information away. So basically the service don't stop delivering their service. The member of staff concerned doesn't have to spend time sitting with the auditor. Our auditors are remote. They don't come on site. It's all done remotely these days. And what happens is the information is sent to the auditor, so normally by email or dropped into a file. The auditor will then work on that data, and then they'll come back to the officers with any questions or concerns. It may be that they spend an hour or two going through a process and a system with an officer to understand it, so they've got a really good idea of how that process works. And once the auditor's had a chance to look at the data that's been provided, they will come back and they will do a meeting at the end of the audit to talk about any findings or concerns before any draft report is put together. So if they have a concern, they can raise those queries. But a lot of it now is done by email and by Teams meetings. So actually the impact on services themselves is as minimal as we can make it.
Very helpful.
Councillor Jay.
Yeah, I was just wondering, we're obviously planning some fairly big transformation in services over the next 3 to 5 years. In what way is this sort of flexible, or are there areas we're pulling forward or going to look at again because they will be services under transformation?
Absolutely. And with any of the plans that we put together, so obviously at this time of year, this is our projected plan for next year. We know that things happen in year. We know that the transformation agenda is coming up. We know the impact that's going to have on some of those service areas, and it's going to make how we deliver our services very different. So as those items progress, what we do is we change the plan. So for whatever reason, sometimes during the year, we're not able to carry out an audit. So there might be an area where we've got one planned, but something has happened, which means that to have an audit undertaken would be disruptive. So something else has taken over. So we will move that plan around. It is very movable. So what I do when I report to you every 6 months is any changes to that plan are reported, and we update you on any issues and concerns that we feel should be brought forward. We do have an allowance of a few days where we can add audits in, and that does happen during the year where an item that we hadn't anticipated crops up, so we can have additional auditing days to look at that, but the transformation agenda will definitely be on there.
Right, thank you. So we've been asked to consider and agree the proposed internal audit plan for 24-25. Are we all agreed? Good, thank you. Okay, thank you. That takes us on to the final item of the evening. And at this point, I suppose I ought to say, don't get too excited about us having had a short meeting this evening, because the next one is looking as though it may be a little bit longer. So if we have a look at the March 5th agenda, Matt, do you just want to take us through everything that we've got on there and what we think we may have? And I have had a chat about whether or not we wanted to squeeze another meeting in March, but for the moment, I'm suggesting that we stick to trying to squeeze all this into one meeting. Over to you.
Thanks, Chair. I understand that although there are a lot of items on this agenda for March, the overview of the Council's procurement policy will be delayed with the consent of the committee and brought back in the next municipal year. I'm speaking to Deputy Section 151 this evening. A number of the financial reports will actually be dealt with under headings of single reports. The number of items will reduce. I'm sure the content won't change a huge amount, but that might provide some assurance that the meeting won't be as long as it might suggest from the agenda there. So really, as I say, so removal of the procurement policy and some drawing together of other reports with the consent of the committee there. Thank you.
The suggestion is that the procurement policy would come to us at our first meeting in the new municipal year. So it's only that I think there are still one or two I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed. So it seems pointless bringing it here when it's not quite fit for purpose. Everyone agreed with the work programme? Councillor Dundas.
Yeah, just a very quick comment, and rest assured, I'm not going to suggest adding anything on to the 5th of March. And I guess it's not really for us, for this committee, with one meeting left, to start suggesting things for next year, but we don't know who's going to be here on this committee next year. But just going back to what we were talking about Rowan House, I'm not sure if we're planning to, but maybe just a note, maybe around this time next year, it might be worth us looking at the corporate landlord model as a work item and actually reviewing how it's performing and whether it's working or not. Probably not till about this time next year, though, to be realistic.
Yeah, I think that's a sensible suggestion, but as you quite rightly point out, not until it's been in situ for a while and we've got something to actually review and audit. And I hear what you're saying about membership may change, but looking around the permanent members of the committee, it hasn't changed a great deal in the last 24 months, so I'm not anticipating that it's likely to change a great deal in the next 12 months. Right, so all agreed with the March agenda, subject to the amendment that's been suggested by Mr. Evans. Right, thank you. That brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you, one and all. Thank you for those of you who are still online, if you're still there, for your contributions this evening. I wish you all a pleasant evening and hope that my team get through to the next round of the FA Cup this evening. Good night all.